All right, and on the heels of all of that, we've got another one by Elaine Pagels and Carol L. King, Reading Judas. And this takes it from the Gnostic slant of explaining what the Gnostics believed about Judas. And Christians might say, who cares about what the Gnostics believed? What's going on in this book?
Well, that's a book that's attempting to argue that from the very beginning there were alternative views of Christianity, that there were different reactions to Jesus. Now, in one sense, they're again right. There were different reactions to Jesus. Some embraced him in his message and some rejected his message. There's no doubt about that. But this book is interesting in that it claims that there were certain people claiming to be Christian who rejected the message of a physical resurrection, who rejected the idea that Jesus died for sins on the cross, and put it in a Greco-Roman form, this Gnosticism, which we've talked about on several shows, this dualism that says that spiritual ideas are good and matter is evil. And they're explaining how that happened, and they're leaving the suggestion that this goes back to the earliest days of Christianity, when in fact all the Gospel of Judas does is tell you what that discussion was in the 2nd century.
Yeah, and I'm saying, again, this alternative view or alternative idea of Jesus. To say you have a Christian Gnostic is a contradiction in terms, because the Gnostic part contradicts the Christian part.
Yeah, it not only contradicts the Christian part, it contradicts the Jewish part out of which Christianity came. It's an anti-Jewish text. It says that the God of Israel, or the top God, is not the creator God. An underling God is. Sometimes it's a divine feminine. And they botch the creation. The creation is entirely irredeemable. What really matters is the spiritual side inside of you, and coming to discover that you are ultimately a spiritual being and that the world of matter doesn't matter. Well, in Christian circles and in Jewish circles, the entire creation is sacred to God. The matter is sacred just as the spirit is sacred. You know, the whole thing that we get into about the environment is based on the premise that it matters what we do with God's creation. We have a responsibility to be sensitive to it. So in that sense, this represents a distortion of the Christian message. And actually, when you read this book carefully and think about it, you understand why it is that the Gospel of Judas could never have been an original expression of Christianity, because it's so divergent from what Christianity came out of.
All right, if university students are going to be reading this book, okay, how would you describe to them what they are advocating in this book? Why do you need to know this information? What will it do for you? Why is it important?
Well, the book's value is that it does tell you what this alternative movement was doing in the 2nd century, and kind of what the debate became around what the church was teaching and preaching, and the reaction against it. And from that standpoint, it's a very helpful book in showing you what the debate is about God in the 2nd century, just like this show is trying to help you with the 21st. But the negative part of it is the implication that's left, that is, this debate was going on all along, and really no one had the claim of orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is something that came along later, and then it anachronistically imposed its authority back on the earlier period. That's just flat wrong. It's a distortion of history, and it's a distortion of the history of early Christianity. And as such, it's an attempt, again, to take Christ out of Christianity and to turn Christianity into just one belief about how man relates to God and the divine, and how he's supposed to relate to others at a basically ethical level.